Ram 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 Raja Ram, Guru Ram 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 Raja Ram. Jai Siya Ram, Jai Jai Siya Ram, 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 Jai Siya Ram, Jai Siya Ram, Jai Siya Ram, Jai Siya Ram. बोले सियावर रामचंद्र की, सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की। कृष्ण कृष्ण मुकुंदा जनार्दना, कृष्ण कृष्ण लावले कृष्ण कृष्ण मुकुंदा जनार्दना, कृष्ण गोविंद नारायण हरे, कृष्ण गोविंद नारायण हरे, कृष्ण गोविंद नारायण हरे, कृष्ण गोविंद नारायण हरे, कृष्ण कृष्ण मुकुंदा जनार्दना, कृष्ण कृष्ण मुकुंदा जनार्दना, कृष्ण गोविंद नारायण हरे, कृष्ण गोविंद नारायण हरे, अच्युतानंद गोविंद माधवा, अच्युतानंद गोविंद माधवा, अच्युतानंद गोविंद माधवा, अच्युतानंद गोविंद माधवा, सच्चिदानंद नारायण हरे, सच्चिदानंद नारायण हरे, सच्चिदानंद नारायण हरे, सच्चिदानंद नारायण हरे, कृष्ण कृष्ण मुकुंदा जनार्दना, कृष्ण कृष्ण मुकुंदा जनार्दना, कृष्ण कृष्ण मुकुंदा जनार्दना, कृष्ण कृष्ण मुकुंदा जनार्दना, कृष्ण गोविंद नारायण हरे।
Hariom everyone. Can you all hear me clearly? Last week there was some unforeseen emergency that I had to attend to, and it should have concluded, but it was pretty intense and it continued. So I could not drop it off and come to the satsang. Hope you all noted it and did not get disappointed. Sometimes we have to answer to some emergencies, and it was one such. Hope you're all okay with it. Plus, this week we do have the brahmacharins because their class got cancelled in SMU. So they're back to, they have the same timing, the classes in SMU. Welcome back, guys. So without much ado, we will start with the invocation. Then Hari Chaitanya will read the shlokas and I'll repeat them, and then we will get into the discussion, thoughts presented by Brahmacharini Divya, then Brahmachari Hari Chaitanya will present, and I will consolidate the thought. So let us begin the invocation. Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hari Garu.
59 and 60. Tadyuktamakhilaṃ
Can you start
vastu.
with the notation, please?
I'm so sorry. Out of practice, Swamiji. It's been a while. Tapo bhikshina papanam shantanam vitaraginam mumukshunam apekshoyam ātmabodho vidhiyate. 59. Tadyuktamakhilaṃ vastu
Tadyuktamakhilaṃ vastu
vyavahārastadanvitaḥ
vyavahārastadanvitaḥ
tasmātsarvagataṃ brahma
tasmātsarvagataṃ brahma
kṣīre sarpirivākhile
kṣīre sarpirivākhile anaṇvasthūlamahrasvamadīrghamajamavyayam adhirghamavyayam arūpaguṇavarṇākhyaṃ
tadbrahmetyavadhārayet.
tadbrahmetyavadhārayet. Thank you, Hari.
Hari Om. So we are now reaching the point in the text where in the past we have received the teachings, statements of fact were being made, then proceeded by logic to help us understand those statements of facts. And then the Shastras even help us try to experience that. And usually near the end of the Shastras, there's expressions of reveling in that experience. So at this point, Adi śaṅkarācarya ji must be doing that, where he's attempting to describe his reveling in that experience. But as always, whenever those experiences are given, it still becomes our sadhana at that point to still do vichara on it. So we'll continue with that perspective. So in this verse, verse 59, there are three main statements that I want to begin with, breaking the verse into three main statements. Tasmātsarvagataṃ brahma. So this is the point that's being made in this verse. Therefore, Brahman is all-pervading. Now, in order to substantiate that, there are two perspectives that are given. tadyuktamakhilaṃ vastu, which is the first one. The second one is vyavahārastadanvitaḥ. So the way I've come to understand it is that usually in the Shastras, we say the phrase that Brahman pervades everything as chala achala. We see those two phrases. Chala is that which is alive and beaming and has living. We see it alive. Achala is that which is like a rock or dirt, plant, something that is unmoving, so inert. So tadyuktamakhilaṃ vastu. The first point is trying to emphasize that those things which we consider as inert, achala, that is pervaded by Brahman, and vyavahārastadanvitaḥ, which is all actions that arise are also pervaded by Brahman. So in a way, it's looking at both aspects from our experience and saying that both of them are pervaded by Brahman alone. So let's take the first one. Tadyuktamakhilaṃ vastu. Brahman is the only thing that is real. The clay is the only thing that is real in the pot. So when I touch the pot, I will always be touching the substratum, never the pot's name or form. So when I subjectively experience everything in that true highest standpoint, I am experiencing the only experience, which is existence itself. So again, when I use the word experiencing, it's that subjective, non-dependent, without experiencing, not through three instruments. So I wanted to clarify that point. Then vyavahārastadanvitaḥ, that all actions are possible only because of that meaning Brahman alone. So we've seen maybe in verses in Bhagavad Gita that say that, we may be standing up, sitting down, eating, and the mind itself goes through many of the gunas like sattva, rajas, and tamas. And all such actions are pervaded by Brahman alone. So when we are left asking, we see fools that may not see Bhagwan in those actions itself. So we go around asking, where is God? Where is God? Where is God? But as soon as, sorry, give me one. That's fun, handling a distraction at the same time. Anyhow, so whenever we are saying, where is God, the very fact that I'm alive and able to ask that question, where is God, is very, very much the proof that God exists within me, which is enlivening me to ask that question in itself. So that consciousness is that subjective experience, and that is God itself. Therefore, when we look at both perspectives, the chala and achala, both what seems like separate beings are both pervaded by Brahman. tasmātsarvagataṃ Brahman. Now, Gurudev in his commentary gives a very good analogy, saying just as the waking mind is all pervading in the dream, because the whole dream has arisen from the mind, every activity in the dream is only prompted by my own waking mind. So the highest state of consciousness is that one raw material that everything is made from. And to really emphasize this, the Shastras give us one more analogy. kṣīre sarpirivākhile, that we may not be able to see God like this in everything. So we're given the analogy that Brahman pervades everything just as the butter permeates through the milk. And so this has very powerful significance. Not only is it just a simple example to show how Brahman is all pervading, but if we look at the process of extracting butter from milk, it actually also is an analogy for our sadhana. And Gurudev at one point goes through this analogy literally. So I want to spend a few minutes to talk about that as well. So to get butter, you need to get milk, boil the milk, cool the milk, add a sour agent, therefore it curdles, then keep it quietly, then to churn it, collect it, boil it on low. Okay, I'll give you the parallel as I go. This is going to get really long. So to get the milk is equivalent to getting sattvic qualities. Once we uplift our mind to that sattvic quality, we then have to boil the milk. Boiling the milk means that we boil it in the world outside. Shastras never tell us to run away from the world, but to elevate our mind in and through all of our actions. So that is boiling in the world outside. But after each experience, that reflection has to happen, and therefore we have to cool the milk, meaning we have to also cool the mind until it becomes steady and calm and peaceful. Then you have to add a sour agent. In this case, put a little Upanishad or Gita into the mind, which starts to curdle that quality of mind. And again, it has to be kept still for a long period of time because it needs to take root and the spiritual vasanas have to uproot and replace the materialistic vasanas that we have. Then to churn and collect. So we have to churn the butter, right? So in the same way that contemplation is going over and over again with what the Shastras have said and what my experience has been like, put them together and find those nuggets of wisdom. I find it funny because Swamiji has a series of playlists on his YouTube called Nuggets of Wisdom. That where are those lessons, that application results that come from putting together my experience plus the guidance of the Shastras. Then we continue to boil it on low heat. Gurudev here says that through Shastra and contemplation only accompanied by social service, karma yoga, thus slowly it is really inculcated. You can't do it on high heat because then you'll end up burning the bottom and then the water will spurt. In the same way, we can't be extreme with too much excitement in our seva, because that is just the bursting and bubbling of our egos still. Then finally, whatever remains after this process, then we have that golden, eternal, unperishable ghee. And in the same way, we reach that imperishable state where having gone, we don't return. So there's that analogy. Not only does it give us that highest fact that Brahman pervades everything, chala and achala, just like butter that permeates through the milk, but that analogy also acts as a sadhana, a guideline of sadhana for us. So it was quite interesting. Now, moving on to the verse 60. Tadbrahmetyavadhārayet. So again, we come back to this statement of try to understand that Brahman with firm understanding. And how is it being described in this verse? All in negative terms. It's a full list that we can write out. ānanvasthūlam. So not small, not gross or big. Ahrisvam adhirgam. So it's not short and it's not long. Ajam or avyayam. So it's not born or it's not decaying. The point of this verse is to break our minds. This is a classic methodology by which they put two contradicting things together in one place, leaving the mind no other option but to stop its search. Therefore, these actually become very powerful pointers in meditation. Gurudev talks about how the human mind is like a magnet. It has the North Pole and the South Pole, meaning we experience sorrow and joy, success and failure. But we go around demanding, I only want happiness, I only want happiness, I want to get rid of sorrow. But in fact, that is impossible in this vyavahāric standpoint. So if we take a piece of magnet and say, I don't want the North Pole and I cut it off, what am I left with? That same end that I cut it off has now become that new North Pole, and therefore I'll still have North Pole and South Pole. This is exactly what Gurudev says that vyavahāra is. You cannot do away with both. The only thing that is left to do is that these two poles of life must be endured in every experience of the mind and intellect. In other words, we have to go through these experiences with titiksha, that it is a matter of fact. Then how do we undo this mind that is constantly magnetized to joys and sorrows? Go back to the analogy again. How do we unmagnetize a piece of metal? It has to be dropped over and over and over again, right? Until it comes back to its original form, which is that soft iron. And so these contradictory vocabulary that's given is that you're pretty much hammering that mind, which is the metal, over and over again with contradictory statements to get it to eventually drop its dualities that it's constantly looking at. So in this case, it is neither small nor big, neither is it short or long. It is not born nor decaying. So, and then the next verse, next line is arupa, aguna, avarna, and ākhyam. Here, arupa is whatever form I see, it is just an intellectual concept. Like, for example, we see different forms of Bhagwan, like Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Ram, Devi. All of these are just, again, constructs of the mind for its aids. Gunas. Sometimes we describe Bhagwan as, oh, he's all compassionate. Gurudev absolutely says, no, he's not all compassionate, especially from that highest standpoint. He speaks from there. He cannot be this or that. These are still constructs of the mind. Avarna, so a type of quality. Sometimes we say Bhagwan is, black, white, yellow, and then a Hindu will stop you and say, no, Bhagwan is blue colored. So again, all of these are just attributes given because the mind has a tendency to always think in terms of names, forms, and qualities. The last one is ākhyam, that there is also, it does not also have a name. What do you mean? We have all of these different names of Bhagwan, and fine, if we wanted that ultimate one, we call him Om or Brahman. How about that? How can you say that Brahman doesn't have a name, Brahman? In Yoga Vasishta, there is a particular line that the great self-existence is afterwards attributed to the titles like reality, Rita, self, Atman, supreme, Param, immense, Brahman, truth, Satyam, and so on and so forth. But these are the expressions that are given by the Mahatma because they only have the tool of language to describe it. So it is a Mahatma in their experience using their imagination that they give us these names. So even then it is a kalpitaha, which is the actual word used in that verse in Yoga Vasishta. The point being is that any of these qualities, any of these angles of analysis of Brahman is just that, an intellectual analysis of that which cannot be comprehended by the intellect. Because we're at this advanced stage of ātmabodha, that we have gone through logic, we have gone through fact, we're now reveling in it, all aids must be dropped at this point. So it is that subjective experience without any instrument, including our own mind and all of its tendencies to identify it in terms of any names, forms, categories, qualities, etc., so on and so forth. All of that must be dropped, and we must now just revel in that subjective experience. So as a last warning, any of these words saying that this is just a kalpitaha of a Mahatma, they all need to be dropped, doesn't mean we drop them in the beginning of our sadhana. This is at the end of our sadhana, when we have gone through the Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana and are at that highest state of meditation. This is the last step that must be dropped at the end. I do apologize that I took a little bit more time, but that is all I have, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Hari Om. These two shlokas nearing the end of this amazing grantha, we find a shift in the kind of analysis that's done. And what I mean by that is, in these two shlokas, we'll see how there's a difference from seeing this Brahman as something that's relative to everything else versus seeing it as the only thing, not having anything in relation to it at all, in consecutive verses. Really cool to see. So starting off, tadyuktamakhilaṃ, meaning that everything is pervaded only by that Brahma. Now, subtlety is the measure of pervasiveness. If something is gross and more tangible, we can't designate that as very pervasive, vyapakatva, because it can't be everywhere, it can't be in all things. If you look at the elements even, earth element is far less pervasive than the others, like fire, air, and so on. As they get more subtle, their pervasiveness also increases. Now, the funny thing about pervasiveness, though, is even though it's around everywhere, in and through everything, we seldom pay attention to it until there's a marker given, until there's some attention paid to it. For example, imagine you have some kind of pain, back pain or a leg pain, something like that. How often do we use our arms and legs constantly for different things throughout the day? How often do we think about the extent we use our back? We don't. It's just, we don't really think about, I'm using my back for this, I'm using my back for that. But the moment that back and neck is in pain is when we truly understand. Getting out of the bed becomes a problem. Standing up straight becomes a problem. Finding a comfortable position to sleep in to get that rest is also an issue, constantly moving around. We understand that bending, every single action that is done requires this back muscle, apparently. We finally start to realize that once it's in pain, once that attention is given there. Now, even more pervasive, what's the result of it? That from this pain, if there's lack of sleep, if there is lack of rest because of it, the mood also shifts because of it. It goes like a domino effect, where if someone were to ask, why are you so irritable today? You say, oh, my back is hurting, which sounds like a lame excuse. On one level it is, but we retracing our steps and seeing how things have gone, we understand why that effect is there. Now, why do I bring this up? That for something that is at the very gross level of this body, we don't even take into account the functioning of a specific body part until attention is drawn to it because it's in pain. The pervasiveness of what it has is not even known until it's in pain. This very Brahman that is beyond words, beyond any form, beyond any kind of thoughts, nirvikalpa, if not for Shastra, how else do we pay attention to that? By negating everything else, when it's that subtle. So understanding that this will not be easy to do. And in his commentary, Pujagurudev points out that meditating on these differences, then meditating on the subtlety, how it's different from anything else, that is the way I get to understand and remove that ignorance. So here, meditation is not simply approaching that seat of meditation and thinking this thought constantly, but going through that entire process given in a text like this, from the very beginning of what is the qualification, all the way through different cycles of seeing that I am different from what this true nature is. That what I think I am has nothing to do with it. What I am is completely different from what I think my nature is right now, given very specifically here. Now, tadanvitaḥ, whether it's vastu, whether it's vyavahāra, anything that's done is only because of the presence of this ultimate illuminator. That's the reason why it's done. Where oftentimes in our mental oscillations, I make a distinction, saying that certain thoughts, certain actions that I have are divine, certain thoughts, certain actions that I have are undivine, that they're completely an opposite. But the truth is, it's not that one thing is divine, one thing is not. There are gunas that are functioning. Actions and thoughts can be more sattvic than others, but saying that they're undivine and one is in accordance with what that divine is, one is not a fair statement to make, because any action, any thought is illuminated by that same illuminator. Therefore, it's not that I'm doing something that's out of bounds of it. It's still within that same illuminator. That's what's illuminating. Like if there's any kind of a relation between two friends, a parent and a child, a guru and a shishya, the way that relationship really progresses and becomes formidable is not just when only positive thoughts are shared, but honest thoughts are shared. That even if it is a thought of jealousy, even if it is a thought of anger, when that's aired out and resolved, the relationship goes from there. In the same way, then looking at my own personality, if I dismiss those thoughts and actions that are bad and marking them as undivine and saying this is a shameful thing that I think this way, that I behave this way, doing myself a disservice. When that Brahman is that illuminator of both actions, seeing that with this equipment that I have, I'm capable of doing something positive or negative, and that way understanding what the Swadharma is, in line with the Varna, Ashrama, personal tendencies, all of this taken into account, these are all markers in the way to realizing that truth then. So not beating myself up because there are differences in thoughts, but seeing even that bad thought is still illumined by that same Brahman. There's no distinction there. And in my book here for this shloka, I guess studying it the first time, one thing that stood out was I put a circle around the verse and said, this reduces jealousy. So I wrote down there. And that comes from seeing that even though there are so many differences in beings, in my own personality, the more I pay attention to those differences, instead of seeing where they're illumined by, That takes me down that wrong path then. And there are differences that are required at certain points. If Swamiji wants one of you to speak and share something, and he says, you Amma, you please share. That doesn't do anything. If he says, you Amma, the glasses, you share. It still doesn't do anything. You Amma, the glasses and the black hair, you share. He's giving more upadhis like this, more markers. Are they doing anything to specify who we're talking about here? Not at all. They're not helping at all. If anything, it's belaboring the process of trying to find out who we're talking about. So pervasiveness is that which is in and through everything. But instead of focusing on that which is pervading, when I focus on those things that are being pervaded, that's where I'm going down the wrong path. And because I've done that for janmas and janmas, I find myself with this baggage of vasanas now. And the distinction one found in these two shlokas is, in the first shloka here, we see that pervasiveness is a major theme, like the butter pervading the milk at all levels. The second shloka we find, though, it starts right away with anaṇvasthūlam, right off the bat saying that this Brahman is neither subtle nor gross. The entire idea of pervasiveness is predicated on an entity being more subtle than another entity. It's all relative there. But here is saying any idea of relativity that I give to that Brahman is only a misnomer. There's a TV show where there's a character. He's very self-conscious about himself because he says, I'm the shortest guy in my family, so the rest of the family picks on me. My dad and my two brothers are both taller than me. I'm the shortest one. I'm a small guy, so they pick on me. What's this guy's height? 6'5" is his height. So in the normal world, with all of us, he's a giant. In his own family, though, they treat him, you're like a dwarf is what they call him, and they pick on him. Why? Because they're all 6'9", 6'10", like that. So relative to something else, that's how we quantify and give it a title and an adjective. But with this Brahman, then there is no idea of that relativity in the first place. So in one verse, even though it says it's pervasive, that's for me to understand that there is no idea of any kind of limitation of time or space on this Brahman. That's the point to get there. Here in this second verse here, when it's given that there is no subtlety, there is no grossness associated with it, it's that any distinction given to any entity is only relative. There is no chance of relativity for this Brahman. So one step higher there in a consecutive shloka. And it's also given adhirgham that there is no shortness to it or longness to it, no birth or change, no vikara, nothing possible to it. And the only reason I attribute these is for vyavahāric purposes. So deeper into understanding this shloka, we also see that when my mental faculties are focused on trying to improve the differences that I have, physically and mentally, we see that as a road to being a better sadhaka. If I'm someone who is completely overtaken by tamas, lack of motivation, lack of inspiration, I could be overtaken by rajas, sitting and contemplating, trying to understand and make sense of the world through Shastra. I can't do that because frenetic activity is all I want to do. Those differences then that I have in my personality, they have to be addressed. I can't say that Brahman pervades all, this is how I am, therefore I know the truth, but even if I'm overly rajasic or tamasic, that's okay. That can't be my mindset. But at a certain point, certain differences that exist in my very nature about how I am, what my patterns and tendencies are, I can't beat myself up for those. There are certain limitations in the personality that take a long time to weed out, and I can't see that as an impediment to my growth. But if vasanas must be exhausted, must be extinguished, that will be a painful process at some point. Shastra doesn't paint a rosy picture there, it gives me the truth. The final thing about this shloka is words matter so much when we see how specific these two shlokas are about pervasiveness, about the nature of what this Brahman is. Because oftentimes we make the statement that I am the same as that Brahman, is what we say. Right? I am the same as that Brahman. But that also is a misstatement. I am Brahman, the one and only, is a much different statement than I am is the same as that Brahman. When I say I am the same as something, that means there are two entities, they're identical. That can't be the case when it comes to this Siddhanta here. There is no Brahman, there is no me separate from it. They're one and the same. Sorry, one and only is what they are. So when we look at these shlokas then, when these different lakshanas are given, from the standpoint that they're given from, what their exact wording is, what they're pointing at, becomes very, very important. And we see that especially in these two shlokas then. That's all I have, Swami.
Thank you, Hari. tadyuktamakhilaṃ vastu vyavahārastadanvitaḥ. The more subtler aspect in this particular shloka that is being covered, at this point of our vyavaharik satta, transactional plane of experience, we find that Bhagavan, Ishvara, Paramatma is also another concept which we distinctly try remembering, whether it is during puja or japa or dhyana or any other time that we distinctly remember. What we are trying to do is, there is this Jagat also and there is that Bhagavan also. The moment we create such a distinction, our own sadhana carries an impediment in our understanding. What is the truth then? The truth is far from it. In fact, what is Maya? When we live in this vision of division, that there is that Bhagavan also and there is this Jagat also, this distinction in our day-to-day transaction is called our delusional perception. This anya bhava is called our delusional perception. What is this shloka saying? What should be the perception? Let me put it this way. You, me, or any realized person, each one of us is constantly soaked in Brahman and we experience Brahman. I'll repeat that statement again. You, me, or any realized person, each one of us is constantly soaked in Brahman and we are experiencing Brahman. Then we immediately say, oh. But then what is the difference between a realized one and us? There's only a tiny difference. They know it, we don't. What's the difference? They know it, we don't. Whenever we look at, say, abhushana, abharana, ornaments, we look at the fanciness of the design. Oh, this looks so clean, straight lines, so modern looking. Or this looks like an ancient version and it has the feel of the authenticity of it being the ancient relic It looks very authentic. In both cases, what we are missing is the drishti of the goldsmith. What is the drishti of the goldsmith? Goldsmith here I am referring it to as the Brahma drashta. What is the goldsmith's view? Whether it is antique looking or whether it is modern looking, is it gold? If it is not, then don't even talk to me. Both have a relevance only if it is gold. That is how the goldsmith looks at it. Forms, forms, names, shapes, they're immaterial. Whatever form, whatever name, whatever utility that it is in, it is ultimately that gold is what I am handling, is the known wisdom of that goldsmith. Similarly, for a realized one, when they look at this prapancha, I specifically use that word for this jagat. This prapancha is made up of these 5 elements, but they are looking past these 5 elements. They are looking at that which is their own true nature, which is the substratum of these 5 elements and their modification as well. Their drishti is at that substratum. Where is our drishti when we see this prapancha? Say there is dosa being made or idli being made, and there is a group of 8, 9 of you having dinner, and you are looking into the bowl. Oh, there are only 2 more left. There are so many people. I am still hungry. Our drishti is at constantly calculating, evaluating how this prapancha should run, how this vyavahara should run. And who do we call as smart? The one who is extremely brilliant in trying to manage, manipulate and use that worldly thing for the best of the utilities. That is where we limit ourselves. But what is the shloka saying? The Baba, everything in this prapancha is nothing but that Brahman alone. There is nothing other than. Anything that which we are perceiving as other than has to be in the realm of our projected reality, illusory perception. When I say illusory perception, it doesn't mean that I am not perceiving it. I perceive it, but it is perceived as an illusion. That clarity has to be there. So the example that is given here is very beautiful. kṣīre sarpihi iva akhilam. In the milk, there is abundance of ghee. I'm talking of the milk which is uncorrupted by the processes of add-ons that are given in it, D, A, B to Z to whatever that they add. Without that, when it is the normal milk straight from the udders of the cow, how does it? It has a viscosity to it. When you are handling that milk, you very clearly can tell, even by the touch of it, the feel of it, that this milk has abundance of this ghee in it. For an untrained mind, when it is said this particular batch of milk has a higher potency of ghee in it, we would probably laugh at that fellow and say, hey, all I see is white liquid. Ghee, if done properly, it has to be golden yellow liquid. Where is it? Maybe if it solidifies, you can call it as, but still the color, where is it? I don't see it. You're bluffing. You don't know what you're talking. So there is so much of process that it goes through. The green fodder eaten by the white cow yields the white milk, and that white milk, when boiled slowly in a pot, and reaches to the boiling. You take it out, bring it down to a certain lukewarm temperature, add the curd in it, the culture in it. There also it is culture, okay? It is a culture of the bacteria. Similarly, as we talk, samskara of the mind. So similarly, that is added on. After that is added on overnight, it transforms. The process again is transformation. It transforms the very basic content, which is the milk. Similarly, this samskara that we are focusing upon, if it has not changed our basic raw structure, how do we know it has changed? Just like in the milk and curd process, when we take, sometimes our in-house curd expert is Hari Chaitanya. So when he has put it late at night and early morning, he pulls it out of the oven, because that's the warmest place. So he pulls it out of the oven, and then the outer surface, it doesn't very clearly tell you if it is done or it is yet to be done. So he bends it over and checks. When he bends it over, precariously he bends it over, that if it is still liquid, it will fall. But if it is, what is this? He's checking its stability. Similarly, if we are a sadhaka, what is our stability? That has to be checked. And then you scoop out the top layer and you do the churning process. You take the churner and then churn it in with vigor, vitality. There cannot be, oh, I am a Deena, Heena, Bhakta, Sadhaka, how can I be? I am like this only. Nah, that doesn't work. There has to be that vigor and vitality and dedication to do it. Yes, your arms will feel the burn as you dedicatedly do it for 15-20 minutes. How do you know that that butter has come? There again, there is this solidification. Just like in our intellect, all these concepts have to solidify into the pure whiteness of it. Pure whiteness of it, where all the hardness has been cracked, all the fluff has been eliminated, only the butter floats. That solidification, that you take in the white heat of meditation, all the blemishes that which we have been carrying as we do in nididhyasana, here also in the butter is liquefied and purified to be called as ghee. Therefore, when somebody calls ghee as butter, I get irritated, because one is impure, the other is pure. They both are not the same. Hint, hint. Butter is not the same. So you cannot call ghee as butter. One is impure, the other is pure. That which remains, if done properly, it will remain for eternity. Butter has that. That is why it is called one of the Panchamrita. That which it stays to eternity. Similarly, that which is lying in and through, pervading in and through every aspect of this vyavahara is nothing but that Brahman. Nitya vastu tu ekam brahma tad vyatiriktam sarvam anityam. ब्रह्मन के अलावा, ब्रह्मन के सिवाय और कुछ पदार्थ है ही नहीं. There cannot be anything other than it. Whatever is seen, perceived is only a projected reality. Even if this portion of it is intellectually understood, we do not get shaken up with trivial things of life. Somebody paid attention, somebody didn't pay attention, somebody smiled at us, somebody did not smile at us, somebody giggled at us, somebody did not giggle at us, somebody did not pay attention to the sari that I'm wearing, somebody did not pay attention to the dhoti that I'm wearing, somebody is not appreciative, somebody is... All these vyavahāra, they do not distract, disturb the true sadhaka. If I'm getting disturbed, if I'm getting distracted, then certainly there is a lot that has to be processed where I focus on getting to that stability. Okay. Now, moving forward, this shloka is quite a tongue twister. Anu means small. Ananu is that which is not small. Sthula means big. Asthula meaning not big. What he wants to say is, he wants our brain to really put effort in trying to understand that Brahman is sukshmati sukshmam, brihatvat brihatvam. That which is bigger than the biggest, smaller, subtler than the subtlest. Ananu means that which is big. Asthulam, that which is subtler than the subtlest. Hrasvam, that which is small. Dirgham, that which is long. Ajam, avyayam, arupam, arūpaguṇavarṇākhyaṃ. Rupa, guna, varna. Rupa, the shape. Guna, the attributes. And varna, the description or the categorization. Varnakhyam. This Brahman is of that nature. If it does not have avarnakhyam, that which cannot be even described, then how are you describing it? Now the only way to communicate is words. Words are all I have to teach this class away. There's no other way other than words. So as a pointer, these pointers are used. Let's not get hung about the pointers, but that which is being pointed through these pointers. As you drive from Houston to Dallas, it says Dallas, 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles. You are entering Dallas. There's a board that says. You don't suddenly put a brake and then stop there and then settle there. No, that is a pointer. That pointer is pointing at that which has to be reached. The pointer is not our destination. All the things that which my mind can hang upon, hold on to, they have to be deconstructed. Deconstruction of our identity, deconstruction of our ego, deconstruction of the minutest conceptual identity that we may be carrying has to be shredded. Because this experience of my true nature, the blissful nature, is not a conceptual state of experience. Therefore, in Kenopanishad he says, अगर समझ में आया तो आपको समझ में नहीं आया. If you claim that you understood, यदि मन्यसे सुवेदेति, no न वेदेति वेदच. Definitely you have not understood. So let us focus on that which is being pointed, and that which is pointed at is my true nature, and that true nature is that Brahma Tattva, Advaya Brahma Tattva. So that has to be understood, that has to be assimilated. Then one has to abide in it with clarity, and having Now, abiding in that clarity, then unshakable is the experience. That is where we should end in. So the milk and turning into curd and turning into ghee, there's a lot to be understood. Please meditate upon it and translate it into sadhana as to what refers to which part of sadhana and where are we and how much more do we need to put effort dedicatedly to reach that which is my true nature. With that, I will wind up for the day. Nothing much to add, I think, today. No announcements. So that's about it. Take care. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaः, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritangamaya. Om purnamadah purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. ओम शांति शांति शांतिः. हरिः ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः. हरिः ओम. Take care everyone.